All right, so just an update on the 67 390 GT engine. Uh, it's a slow process going through making sure all the piston rings fit the bores and the bores that I'm going in. Theoretically, they all should due to the machine shop, but I like to double check all the work. We checked our camshaft in play. I had to buy a different timing set. Uh, Crane cam's timing set didn't work too good, so we ended up getting a closed double roller timing set, and it put me right at 2000s on the cam thrust. And then on the crankshaft, I didn't take any videos installing that or the rear main seal or anything, but a little trick I learned from a machinist that builds quite a few engines. I tried to put the side seals in with the nails. I got them in there, and I came out the next day, and one of the seals had split right where the nail was on it. Not that the nail dug into it, but right where the nail goes against it. Let's see if I can find it here. You can see right there, my camera will focus. You can see right there that it split it. There we go. And it wasn't due to the nail, because you can see in the groove it didn't like dig into it, but I said hell with it, I'd try to give it a shot. And I should have listened to that machinist guy, because I had to take that back apart. And then what I did was RTV'd the sides and a very little down on the face, down on there where it goes to the block, because you don't want this shit getting into your bearing or into your seal. The seal I just put on with oil and just coated the outside, not the inside, but the outside where it went into the block and into the cap with RTV. And that works pretty good. But what I did was I took my RTV, which I used gray. And gray works really good for real rigid applications, and that's what this is. And I torqued that cap up, and then basically stuck this down in the hole right there, and then just filled it up until I could see it coming out of the back here. And then I just cleaned that up and smoothed it out. Same thing on this side, cleaned it up and just smoothed it out. And I think that'll be way better than them side seals ever will be. And then same thing on the inside. You can see, I don't know if the light can get down in there. And I just smoothed that out and made sure that it went all through there also, which it did. And that'll make a hell of a lot better sealing than those side seals ever will, even with putting RTV on them. I don't care what anybody says. I've done this on other engines to where the only gaskets available are cork, which in my opinion, cork gaskets are garbage. About 30,000 miles and some bitch will be leaking again. But basically we got cylinders 4 and 8 per the rods. The 390 is kind of different. Your numbered side should always face the outside of the block. There's an oiling hole on the small end of the rod and an oiling hole on the big end of the rod, and those should always point at the opposing cylinders with each other, which I found very interesting. Some of these older engines are a lot different than the newer stuff that's out there today. But back to the crank, I got the crank installed, ARP bolts. Everything torqued up good, 100 foot-pounds in 3 increments. Obviously divide, 100 into 3. Our crank thrust was right at about 4. I didn't even take any videos on any of that. It's pretty simple. Put your dial indicator up here with a magnetic base. Get your dial indicator out here. Push the crank all the way back. Zero out your dial indicator. And then take a screwdriver and just press it. You don't want to do it on the thrust bearing. But up here on the counterweight, you'd stick your screwdriver in there and press that forward. And that will give you your reading on your dial indicator. And I don't remember offhand what the spec was, but ours was obviously well within the spec. And then the same thing with your rods. When you get those together, you want to check them in a couple different spots. Obviously, everything's lubed up. You want to check in between here in about 3 or 4 different spots. And ours came out to be about 13 thousandths, which is right on spec with what it's supposed to be. You know, all this stuff as you're doing this, you got to check. You can't assume that your machine shop is going to machine everything perfect. Even though mine has everything, the main bearing, vertical oil clearance was right on the money. The vertical oil clearance on my rod bearings on those two was right on the money. Very, very accurate. Whoever machined my block at Kaylee's Motor Service over in South Bend, Indiana. They're very knowledgeable people. You walk into their showroom, got a bunch of trophies, been involved in racing for a long time. And they knew about the FE when I called. And they put the cam plug in the correct way, which is very different compared to the rest of the the Windsors. The Windsors, the dish face outside. FE, the dish face is on the inside, so it'll be flat on the back. This engine is very different than any engine I've ever worked on or put together, which I find very interesting considering it's so old. So we'll get back to it and get the rest of the rods in here. Maybe I'll take some videos of torquing that stuff up, but it's a process going through and measuring everything. It's a long, drawn out process. Didn't want to bore you guys with all that stuff.